good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on the country that you're watching us from. I'm your host, Nalin Chandna, and I'm back again today with the 44th episode of Primetime AMA conducted by TLR Now. I'm here in Muscat, Oman, and I've got my guest, Sonja Lang from Germany. TLR Now has been doing these sessions for a while now. Today, as I said, it's the 44th episode. TLR Now is a niche training and consulting organization which believes in providing customized training solutions to corporates, educational institutions, and not-for-profits. I am Nalin. I am the CEO of National Gas Company in Oman. I also sit on the directorship of TLR Now. I've got a very special guest from Germany today, Sonja Lang. Sonja is an MBA in business economics. She's got 20 years of career in investment banking. She was the foreign exchange options trader and was in charge of product sales for 5 countries, and year after year was voted #1 in her regions. She was even as the only European ever mentioned in the American Orion survey. Originally, she's German. She has lived in Singapore, 15 years in London, 3 years in Cairo, and time and again in Indian ashrams for monk-like trainings. That's so interesting. During her career, she more and more felt a missing link to substantially empower and influence an organization so that continuous and even growing success becomes a fact in a volatile and uncertain business world, which undoubtedly was and is the playground of financial markets for centuries. Without thinking too much of what is possible and not possible, she left business and deeply analyzed what made her so successful. She realized that along the way, she was introduced to powerful strategies and tools and deepened her studies and experiences. Now she bridges her corporate experience with the sciences of the mind, Western sciences of psychology, neuroscience, and anthropology, and Eastern sciences of meditation and pranayama. That's so interesting. Since 2014, she has been running her own consulting business, Mindful Clarity, which inspires people like us across industries and continents to connect with this technology and how to implement and use it in our own lives and business. A very warm welcome, Sonja. We are so delighted to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Nalin, for inviting me to the show and speaking with me. It's a great honor to talk with you about leadership and the digital age.
Awesome. So I think we are going to have a great conversation today. I'm really looking forward to it. And we have audiences which have joined from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. They are watching us live. And for our viewers, in case you're not able to watch the full show, please do catch up with the recordings. This is going to be an awesome show, I'm telling you. And it's a conversation to be remembered. So I think, Sonja, to start with our topic is focused leadership in the digital age. So how was leadership different in the industrialized age versus now the digital age that we talked about today?
It's obviously a question which is on everybody's mind these days. And the question has 2 parts, and I would like to split it. The first one is to look at what is actually leadership. And then the second one to look at how is the industrialized era different to the digital era. So a leader for me is someone who actually with an absolute integrity in their own motivation, thoughts, and action does the right thing, not only for themselves, but also for the others. And it goes beyond the point of looking at what are the others. It's the furthest interpretation, because we tend to look into groups. My family, my company, my country. That is all limitations which we take away all these limitations and look at what is the best possible way for everybody. And the second part about it is also to look at how do I actually instill this into and as a trust to other people, that they actually believe in that. And that is all the time. Anything which is not continuous is obviously not able for others to trust upon.
Right.
So now if we're looking with that now in the industrial age, things were very different, where a leader had in a way, a limited role, where we were able to just fix around ourselves, around the new production, the machines, the processes, where the humans would actually mold themselves around whatever was created for the machines to work. And that meant that the limitation about what a person does would always depend on the machine or the process they would be working on. So their way of being and their way of actually doing and their authority to act was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which unfortunately led to situations where we had CEOs now deciding on what is the color of the carpet in the conference room, because nobody is actually being allowed still to make decisions.
Right.
And that is a really important part about who is actually making decisions. And in the industrial age, it was very easy. We would make our careers and bring our success by simply being faster and knowing more. This is how we were really getting on with things.
Right.
Now, in the digital era, where we have computers being faster and learning continuously without any delay, really,
Right.
that is not the case. That is not our formula for success anymore. In 2018, the World Economic Forum already had in its employment report like 10 traits which will become less important, and 10 traits which will be growing needs and skills to have in order to be really successful and relevant. And we want to be relevant in the first place. And the skills are around analytical and critical thinking, in particular complex problem-solving skills, which is really important, or creativity, emotional intelligence, and what we're obviously talking about, leadership and social influence. So the biggest change which we have now as well between the industrial and the digital age is how fast information and change is actually occurring. So time is a really, really important factor.
Absolutely.
And humans, in a way, as for anthropological reasons, are actually not really in favor of short-term changes. Our unconscious mind is actually working actively against to holding the status quo and to resist change.
Right.
Yet, obviously, on the long term, there's nobody else better than the human beings to actually adapt to change. So again, time is obviously an issue at that point. So now, how do we bring the two things together? The first part about it is to actually understand that this change of information and with it the change of processes is getting faster and faster. And already in the 1980s, we had the term the VUCA world, so the volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous world.
Absolutely.
This is what we're now facing, and this is how do we adapt to that as humans in our day-to-day life, but in particular as leaders who need to address and inspire others with their own vision.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point that you brought in, Sonia, that there has to be a difference between management and leadership, because what has happened is that people are getting into micromanaging, and maybe they're delivering what is expected in a framework. But as leaders, we also need to actively think about strategy, actively think about vision, growing the organization, growing ourselves, and growing our people, because I think real leadership is about empowering people and developing others. Enhancing your influence with people is what real leadership is, I believe. One thing. So could you elaborate on this VUCA world, please? I think it's a good acronym: volatile, uncertain, complex or chaotic, as you said, and ambiguous. So I mean, how the change has come about in the recent world and it has become a VUCA world.
So if we're looking at what happened because of the digital age, is that information is available to everybody instantaneously all the time, and because this change is available instantaneously for everybody all the time, it also creates again change, which is then
Right.
again available. So we're in a spiral which we're driving on, and it's self-perpetuating. So if we're looking at the whole idea about like what is the volatility in the market, and I come from a financial market background. So I'm trading foreign exchange in the interbank market, which has $5 trillion of turnover a day. It is really a very fast market. Things in like just a second is an absolute eternity there. And we always had any kind of information coming in, being from Europe, from the US, from China, anywhere, could actually affect what we are trading. But also from the area where it could be coming from. It could be coming from economics. It could be coming from politics. It could come from any area really.
Right.
And the good thing is and we like to borrow from other areas, obviously, where we already have some experiences.
Right.
And having been an foreign exchange options trader, is we had a formula trying to quantify and deal with the lack of information and that it's continuously changing.
Right.
They're looking at how we can capture all points of the VUCA world as well. And the formula, as with anything else, it goes on certain assumptions, and all these assumptions had obviously nothing to do with the real world in the market, but it didn't matter to us. The really important part about it was that we had a way on to help us to get a feeling, to get an idea, to get into probabilities, to get into what are likely scenarios, what are we doing in this seemingly unforeseeable situations. And now it's the same thing which we have now. We have certain skills and we have certain tools already, and we can use these conscious as well as unconscious tools which we already have to understand the program which we have and the program which we are running on. So a lot works around the initial response which we have, because the initial response will keep us in the past where we already know the things. Absolutely. But the future already we know is very, very different. And what we have learned in the past will not actually help us. So now understanding which part actually has to do with the past and which part has to do with the future will be absolutely essential on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's so important, even though it's a VUCA world, but as leaders, it is so important to still take the decisions, because delaying decision making will make the situation even more uncertain, even more chaotic, and even more ambiguous. I think you may commit mistakes, but so far as you've done your due diligence based on the available information, I think it's important that leaders keep on taking decisions and moving forward, whether it is their organizations, whether it is their non-profits, whether it is the educational institutions. Awesome. So, Sonja, what leadership style do you propose will be helpful in the digital age, and why?
Mm-hmm. Nalin, if I may say, you've said something really important as well. Delaying a decision is also making a decision, and that is not taking actual charge, not taking actual control if and where I can actually impose it. And this actually leads very well into the style of leadership I'm looking at, and it has a lot to do with obviously being focused and present as well in the situation and being authentic. And a large part about it has to do with communication as well, and how we're actually relating things. And we have this huge change now, which comes because of technological changes. And once upon a time, actually in the 1860s, there was a Prussian army general who had a similar situation, Graf von Moltke. Because of technological changes, the old strategies, and we know the army is really, really good in creating strategies, but all the old strategies didn't really work any longer. And it really had to do with how in the past the leader would lead by their knowledge and the presence, being always present into the fields. Now, things were then being done differently, where the general would actually stay behind and instruct the troops about what to do and send them out into the field. So now if you then would go like, oh, what you need to do is you need to go to the city of Frankfurt, which is where I happen to be. So you go into Frankfurt, and this is where you attack the people. That didn't kind of work, because by the time the troops are there, people have already moved out of Frankfurt, and my army is now in a neighboring city, and there's nobody you can fight for. But because the goal was so clearly defined, there was no room as well, because the order is you go to Frankfurt. Right. So the goal and the path has both been given. And for him as well, it was really enabling the people as well to go like, you're very well trained. If you see the troops moving, you obviously move with the troops and you attack the troops. Right. And this is pretty much what we have today. A CEO is defining a clear goal about like, okay, fine, we want to do, we take a certain initiative because we believe that initiative will get us to a certain goal. However, what happens because of this digitalized world where everything is changing so quickly? Right. Now that initial initiative isn't actually getting to the goal. And as well, the information, we always think that information will somehow, the CEO has all the information, but some of the information doesn't travel up as well. It's a well-known fact that information doesn't travel up while pressure actually compounds on the way down. So knowing about all this, how do we actually get that part over? And he created a different idea about going from command and control to command and communicate. So the communication towards how do I actually inspire my people about what we're looking to achieve, rather than to being precise and going, this is the action which we will be taking. And that is the important part. So communication is really, really important in order to deal with the changes which are happening, is that the people can actually respond to the change which they see taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sonja, we have the audience also communicating with us. Krishnan Subramaniam says, great to see you both. Thank you, Krishnan. Thank you for joining the program. We have Ansh Chandna. Hello, Ansh. Welcome to the show. We have a question from Krishnan. He says, in your opinion, an effective digital leader is to have more focus on business goals or the P&L?
Mm-hmm. The P&L, I would say, is a logic consequence from having a clear vision for the business instead of being the target. If you do, I don't know which area of business Christian is in. If let's say if I want to sell my online seminars, so I can go like, I want to sell X amount of seminars. This is all well and good, but that is only what will happen if I tell people about it, what I do, what my vision is, why these things are important. Then automatically people will look at it, people will find, oh, I want to learn more about it. And because of that, obviously my coaching and my online seminars will be bought. So it's a consequence rather than the actual goal.
I think to add on to that, Sonia, I think for me, I would say that business goals need an equal focus as well. If you're too finicky about the P&L, maybe in the short term you are able to drive benefits. Maybe you are curtailing expenses like anything, and you bring that P&L benefit. But maybe in the long run, you are kind of not having that adequate focus on the business goal. So, like a car which has like 4 tires, all need to be having the adequate air pressure with fuel in the car, with everything working fine. If everything doesn't work together in tandem or in harmony, I think in the long run, the business will not survive. So business goals as well as P&L are both equally important. Wonderful. I hope, Krishnan, that answers your question. He's saying digital leaders should have empathy. He's asking, digital leaders should have empathy. Since they need to work like machines, emotional detachment might happen. Wonderful point. I think we were coming to that, but yeah, Krishnan has asked.
Okay. If I may be controversial now as well and say it's just actually the opposite. So in particular, as a leader, you need to have the empathy, you need to have a connection with your people. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about internally or externally. Internally, by the way, it's also with yourself. You need to be connected to yourself, what is actually going on, in order to actually have that clear and the clarity and the vision. And it also is, how do you actually take care of your own people in terms of, we have a wonderful statement by Sir Richard Branson as well, who goes, if you take care of your employees will take care of your customers. And if we bind it back to, again and say like, okay, and if that is actually taking place, that actually will also be a monetary success in terms of P&L again. So if you do the right thing by the people, and you have the vision on a certain subject, that is actually what will bring it, because nobody by themselves can actually change and create anything these days. And it's really good that we are at the moment to actually seeing that materialize as well.
Yeah. But we're still human beings end of the day. And as you said about Richard Branson, I remembered about Mark Zuckerberg, who said that if you don't take care of your people, they'll be using your office internet to search for a job. So
Very good.
We have to take care of our people, definitely. So yeah. The next question we have from Anshana. He says, ma'am, given the current circumstances, it makes it slightly difficult to make an impact through the online platform, as there are a lot of problems that can occur in the communication process. How would you suggest one deals with this?
Mm-hmm. I think, as with anything, there are always two sides of a coin. So the online platforms give us a great opportunity to actually reach out to people, and it gives a great advantage. At the same time, as you say, there are challenges as well, and it has to do with that sometimes our things we said with the best intent, however, maybe not very clearly communicated, can lead to misunderstandings as well, and not getting to the intended goal. So having, again, a good communication internally, I need to have a clear vision initially, and as well being able then to bring it across. So communication internally as externally, again, is the most crucial part. And the online platform is just the tool and the vehicle we are using.
Yeah. I think we just need to be all the more conscious of making our engagements more effective. Communication without connecting with your audience is a problem where I think difficulties arise. Yeah, we send about 200 emails every day. We send about 500 WhatsApp messages every day. But if we don't connect with our audience, I think that's where the challenges of communication arise. Wonderful. Okay, the next we have a comment from Mr. Uday Shankar. He says, leadership assumes a whole new dimension in COVID times as you need to virtually manage teams. Absolutely agree, Mr. Uday Shankar. Yeah. Okay, Sonia, coming back to our conversation, we talked about change. Yeah, so you mentioned that change is difficult, but ultimately human beings are the most adaptable to change in the end. So how does change affect people, and why is this process so difficult?
The process is difficult because from our ancestors, when we were still living out somewhere in the savannah, and it was different, where we could not just order food in or have a choice of 5 different meals. The problem was, when will I actually find food, and when will I find food? So a part of our programming was then to conserve energy as much as we can. So instead of doing something in a different way, which means I need to exert more energy, I will do everything the way how I'm used to, which is fuel efficient for my body. So fuel in terms of energy, in terms of food as well. So this part of the programming is there. And being aware of that simple fact, I do also understand that if internally I have this little dialogue going like, oh, I want to change this because I know it's really, really good. And internally I go like, well, but, and I think we've all heard it, like, we've never done it like that. And it always worked in the past. And why should we change? These are the automatic responses which come from the program, which we sort of inherited throughout the millennia, actually. Right. So it has a positive intent in order to actually help us and preserve us, but it isn't really helpful in the current situation anymore, where in particular, because there's so much change happening around us, our adaptability is actually what we want to highlight. So when this urge and need comes up to go like, oh, stop, I don't like change, to go like, okay, I know what this is from, and with compassion, not only for other people, but also for myself, to say like, okay, this is what it's there for. It's looking to actually help me, yet the help is not needed that way anymore. And then making a conscious choice of deciding for actually embracing the change, of seeing the good which the change will actually bring.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if we all know that change is ultimately for the good, but we generally are a bit kind of resistant to it. But if in the subconscious, if we just keep it at the back of our mind that change is difficult in the beginning, gets messy in the middle, but it's awesome in the end. So I think if we just constantly keep on reinforcing that thought in our minds, I think it will be much easier, because change is the only constant, as they say in life.
Absolutely.
So we with Krishnan's question, we had touched upon empathy, but just expanding on that, how important are the personal emotions of my business decisions?
we cannot separate our emotions from our life in terms of, well, this is me being a person, this is me being in business. So it's very important to understand that our decision making part in the brain is actually exactly located where the emotions are, and that is in the unconscious mind or in the amygdala. So if I understand that, then I need to see as well, and the Paul Ekman, who has created the 6 basic emotions, is looking at what does happen within me when these emotions come up. I go a little bit further and go like, there are actually only 2 emotions. Everything else is just a derivative. And I look at the one thing is love and the other one is fear. So if we're looking at what is happening in terms of, well, obviously, if we have a success story, we are very happy, we feel excited, exhilarated, and all these things. So that's a part of love. It's or a derivative of love. Yeah. And the other one is then fear. We are facing change. We don't like change. The VUCA component, it creates a different environment. There is uncertainty. Uncertainty creates it's self perpetuating again as well. So what do I do when these emotions are actually coming up within me? How do I actually respond? Because again, it's this automatism from how we're responding not to the fact which is happening to us, but rather the emotion which comes up. So if I want to really respond to the question, be it business or in a personal environment, which I'm in right now, then I need to understand, oh, there is that emotion coming up. What does that emotion actually have to deal with? To consider that, does it actually have anything to do with the current situation? Or does it actually have to do with something in the past? Again, being in the private or being in the business. If we're looking at, I'm a person in a business environment, then I have the same emotions coming up. So, and it's whether we are talking about, obviously, COVID-19 gives us plenty of change on how we do business these days. So what do we do about it? How can we actually manage that? Again, that change which is needed about it. Now, if I resist it, and as you earlier said, Nalin, also a decision not being taken is also a decision. So for fear of taking actually a decision, I'm postponing the decision. That is also a decision, because I may get being put out of business because the world has moved on and I've not taken any steps to actually move with it. Or COVID-19 is taking place. About how do I actually take active steps in order to protect myself and to protect the business as well. So again, these are all that emotion of fear can stop us from taking the right steps. So that is why it's important to actually being aware of what emotions are happening. And it might only be a little bit of discomfort. It doesn't need to be a full-grown fear, but the discomfort already has an effect. Am I aware of it? Can I take steps to actually work with this? Or do I succumb to that initial trigger of fear and stepping back?
Right. Absolutely. We've got another person from our audience, Dinesh Kumbra. He's saying communication with the company face-to-face has a great impact compared to online. There is a gap between digital and face-to-face. Absolutely. I think you have to just be more conscious and take extra efforts in connecting. Maybe you can throw more light on this, Sonja.
Absolutely. So, and again, if I may come back to my coin and the two sides, if if we would have been in this situation 10 years ago with getting into a lockdown, then we really would have been cut off. But now we still can communicate. So again, it's wonderful that we have these different ways of being able to connect, like we're doing at the moment as well. And it's important to see as well, when we are communicating, when we're talking with people, it's not just about the words which we are saying. There's so much additional information being conveyed, so many things which decide whether I'm really connecting with someone, and it has only 7% of all this actually has to do with the words I'm saying. So the limitation is obviously there, which we have at the moment. And one of the things, there are different degrees on what we can do as well. So as a leader at the moment, sure, I can write an email which says like, people, I'm absolutely with you and we will get through it, and we're taking all the right steps, and we're on a good way, and this is wonderful. People will be reading this and the words are absolutely reassuring. But what is missing is the rapport, that connection. So communication involves many things, and it has to do with what is it I'm doing. So maybe if I'm the CEO, I do pick up the phone and call a few people and say like, look, how are you? How are you actually coping with this? And create a rapport in a different level with that, and really listening to what is really going on as well. And then maybe, obviously, I can't call everybody, but then my middle management is calling their people as well, and making sure that it's not just a written statement which is there, but that authenticity of actually bringing the action with the words together as well, which is really, really important. A true leadership.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, in the digital scenario, the tone of voice becomes so important. So it's absolutely important to pick up the phone and talk to people. Maybe understanding more about the personality of people, which we never thought was essential earlier, because we were sitting face to face and we could see the body language, which might not be a real possibility in the digital scenario. So I think definitely you need to take some extra efforts to make that connection. It is a difficult time, but I think it is teaching us something which in hindsight, a year later or 2 years later, we'll say that, okay, 2020 really taught us so many things.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. We've got another person from the audience, Brigadier Jayant Tiwari. He is saying, keeping the leader within ignited and awakened is so crucial to maintaining the social culture and fabric, and correspondingly to growth, success, happiness. Is it going to be the order of the day?
I absolutely can just concur with that. It's the social culture is social connectedness, and if the digital age actually allowed one thing to take place, is that because we're not molding ourselves around the machines anymore and the processes, we've actually become free. We are free now that we can be what we do best, and that is being human, to actually have this rapport, have that connection with other people. All the things which will be important as well, like the World Economic Forum has already identified, are all things which have to do with being human. Humanness is absolutely at the center. And if I look at a social structure, and it doesn't matter if it is a company or a country or the humankind as a whole in the world, it is a social structure, and it's just a question about where do I again draw my line. And ideally, if I can inspire everybody with the most common denominator, and the most common denominator is that we are all humans. And if we get back to that, and I can connect on that level, then I actually can take everybody along with me as well. there are obviously differences in terms of preferences and focuses, and I need to address that as well. But first and foremost, it's important to see what actually unites us and be able to create the link and the connection through that.
Absolutely. Awesome. The next one we have from Krishnan. He says, will you be discussing about traits of a digital leader? Are there any profiling being done? Krishnan, will surely try, because I think towards the end we should, time permitting, we'll talk about the key traits of a leader. I'm not sure we'll have time enough for a short session like this to talk about profiling, but we can definitely address that separately. We've got another question coming up from Stephanie. I'm sorry if I have not pronounced your name correctly. I believe it's a German name, Sonia. Hi, Nalin, Sonia, given there is a more focus on web-based learning right now, where shall I best look for online offerings on leadership for the digital age for myself, peers, and colleagues?
Absolutely. I think one of the advantages which we have is the digital learning now. It gives us the opportunity to really take the time which we have in order to advance ourselves, which is needed because of all the changes as well. And we have, again, thankfully, through the digitalization, we have now a different choice about when and how to actually do our learning now. And there's obviously the physical present seminars and coachings, which are really important and will stay as well important. Nevertheless, we have now a level of online learning, and I also have launched my online academy where a lot of my seminars are actually available. And it's great because it allows the people to actually look in detail into a certain subject as and when they actually have the time for it. So they're not bound by any kind of time limits. Also, it's not limiting anymore in terms of location. So I'm in Germany and I need to travel to Oman to actually hold a seminar. No, because people in Oman also can look at my seminars. And an additional part is what I find really important and helpful is to see that preparation and after work of a certain topic can be done much more detailed, and is a part of the online seminars as well, where you go through it. Sometimes there's literature beforehand you read, so you're already prepared. Something comes in, you actually go through it. You have the learning, you have a recap, and you have videos to help you along. So it brings a lot of the thought process as well as through videos. There are so many things which can expressed and condensed as well in that way, which isn't a efficiency and effectiveness, which may even be lacking on a normal seminar. So we have now a choice, and that is a wonderful option.
Yeah, actually, the current times have actually been a boon for learning. And as they say that if you are ready to learn, the teacher appears. So that's what happens. And Stephanie, obviously there are lots and lots of free resources available on the internet, but definitely if you need specific things, you need to deep dive. Definitely there are, Sonia is available. We are available at TLR now. We are coming up with the niche training programs. We can talk to you. We can provide customized solutions as well. I mean, there is a bunch of resources available. It's just that we need to be ready to learn. Lots and lots will come our way. Okay, so yeah, so that's good. I have another question from Abhay Chandna. He says, hello Sonia and Nalin, my question might not be relevant here, but what would be your suggestions for teachers who are adapting to this new structure of online teaching? This question is coming from India, where this culture did not exist pre-COVID times.
One of it's a very good question, and I think teachers are certainly one of the most important leaders because they form our children, ourselves in a big way, and so it's a very important question. Thank you for raising it. One of the things I do as a pro bono work as well, I work with an initiative of the World Economic Forum on with children to bring them into the digital age as well. And we had the same situation. We normally were doing full day seminars for the teenagers, where we would be focusing on things like obviously technological digital things, but also Strengths Finder, for example, or communication workshops. And we had a similar situation where none of us was really prepared for how do you manage this as well. And the good thing is, most children these days, or teenagers, have mobile phones as well, and so being able to create again some online sessions for them helped us as well. Again, it's obviously a change, and it takes additional work for the teachers to fill that gap as well, on reaching out, on preparing the content in a different way, on how do you maintain that relationship as well with the students? How do you inspire them? This is all the same things which we discussed for a corporate leader. We have that in the same way there. So again, it is a lot about coming up with the creativity on how to actually bring this alive again for the students as well. And hopefully there are some inspiring stories which we have had today about what to do. And also, if you like to reach out to me, I can share some of my stories as well, if you like.
And I think teachers are really commendable, because I think that community was probably the first one to bounce back immediately if this pandemic arose, because school education I've seen is kind of just happening in the online scenario. Corporates took some time, many organizations took time, many went on to lockdown, but I think schools generally were probably the quickest to bounce back. So there's a lot of commendation for teachers especially.
Yeah.
Sonja, so we've been talking about the importance of being human in the digital age, because that's what the human connect is what people feel is missing. So what do we mean by saying, what are the details of the USP of being human?
I think what we need to look at is what are the biggest things which make humans valuable for us. Let's think about the most important person which you have in your life. What is it? It's about trust. You trust that the person has the best positive intent. You also trust that the person will always be there and being supportive. So it creates a safety environment. You believe you have a rapport, so you can exchange with that person. So all these qualities are what makes a human, and that also that is something which a robot also always will be there. So it's in a way trustworthy in terms of it will be there. However, the rapport, the exchange will be missing. That emotion, which being aware of it is such a powerful thing, being able to relate, the empathy which we heard earlier. So these are all these important points which have to do on an emotional level, and that is what makes a human, the emotions, and being able to carry it across.
Yeah, I think the additional conscious effort that what we expect from others, the others also expect from us. So if we behave in a manner that we expect the others to behave, I think that's what will create a more better environment and a better connect with others.
Absolutely.
Talking about humanness, I was quite interested, and when I saw about your profile that you've spent some time in the Indian ashrams.
Mhm.
So I think it's an interesting thing which our audience would like to know. Where was it, and what it is about, and what were your learnings from there?
Mhm. It's an absolute transformative time for me. I'm also a part of the Isha Foundation and one of their teachers. I went through a monk-like training there for 21 weeks, 7 days a week. Uh, you rise early, you get to bed very late, and but what it does, it looks at all aspects of a inner engineering as well. It's having a depth, a science of how this one is working, and the different tools you can use actually for it as well. So very often we're talking about focus. Focus is really important. Where does focus come from? It's the ability to actually stay with a certain point. And the West more and more is looking at meditation in order to be able to do that, because it's not the absence of thought, to the contrary, it is the ability to steer your thoughts in a very clear manner as well, and
Right.
to exactly to the point where you want it to. It has a lot to do about understanding how the different parts of what makes me me. So what is the importance about my thought and my breath, and how are they actually interconnected as well? I can use just my breath in order to make myself either very, very calm or very, very hyper. Obviously, the first is better when you want to make decisions, for example, when you want to create clarity. But also the breath is really important when it comes down to creating that rapport. If I now change my breathing, and if the breathing is like this, then one of the things which you will see is that whatever I'm saying, it's the same me. However, you will feel a little bit different about it, don't you?
The energy changes, yeah.
Yeah. So even so, only because I was breathing in a different manner, doing a high breathing, which is very common, unfortunately, these days. It creates stress physically in my own body, but also it is being conveyed to the other person as well, which is being perceived. And we're looking at credit worthiness, like, we talked about trust. How much will I trust a person, which my unconscious mind, and I'm not even aware of it, my unconscious mind hears that the breathing is high. And again, from the anthropology, it's okay, why is someone breathing high? Is because they are scared. Why are people scared? Is they may be lying. If they're lying, then obviously it's the opposite of what we're trying to create, and that is that
Right.
connection, that rapport, that trust. So a lot of the things which are there in order to help in an ashram to connect with yourself will also be wonderful tools as well to connect with your company, with your stakeholders, and with anybody you really meet.
Right. So this is 21 weeks at a stretch, right?
That's 21 weeks at a stretch, yes.
Awesome.
And 7 days a week. And yes, it is intense. And this is the beauty about it. Yes, it was super intense. I've not done anything like it before or after. And it has been a blessing to have experienced that. And it is that intensity which actually is what life is all about. If I'm mediocre about something, then whether it's a goal as well, if we bring it into a corporate context again, if I go like, yeah, it's like, we could expand into another country, or we don't, and yeah, we could do this, or we don't, and then that may or may not happen, and nobody cares. Now, but if I now go like, okay, I really, I have the clarity, I really want to get to this point, and this is what we will take, and I bring my everything into it, that intensity, that focus, then it will happen. So, and this is what life is all about as well. It's not a question about will I turn 80, 90, or 100 years, but it's like, how much have I experienced within that time? How much life have I filled into this life? That is, for me, the important part.
Awesome. Okay, Sonia, so coming back to, it was really enlightening to know about the ashram. But Germany is seen as a good example of managing COVID-19, and so far as I understand from the news, that the cases have really come down and life has started getting back to normal. You are German and you are in Germany. Can you share some insights or observations what you felt Germany did right?
Yeah. What in the press is sometimes being portrayed as you're making a choice between the human and the economic importance, I think doesn't really exist, and Germany is a very good example for that. So in the moment of uncertainty, because in February nobody knew anything about what is this COVID-19, what are the real effects, what are the long-term effects about it, how will it, how many people will really, how contagious is it, what are the things. But as a leader, we need to deal with that uncertainty, and with a lack of information, we will need to make a decision. And I think this is what Angela Merkel, our chancellor, has done very, very well. She comes from a scientific background herself. So she was looking at the limited but albeit facts about what is the situation. And she decided that it's most important to actually protect life itself. There were steps being taken every time new information has come in. Additional or varied steps were taken, whether it was a lockdown, whether it was how to wear a mask, how to have social distancing. So as information came in, additional measures were taken. And as you say as well, Germany had very, very few cases by international comparison.
Right.
In terms of infection, and in particular on the death rate as well. And that had, I think, a lot to do with it, because steps were taken preemptively with that uncertainty, however, with a very good intent. It now, looking back at it, it actually seems that some places which may have looked at it on like, oh, we need to keep the economy going, and hence we must continue, because otherwise it has a negative effect on the big social structure. But now let's have a look at what is the big social structure, our country, the people which live in our country. They're all individual humans, and it has become apparent that while obviously all economies had an economic slump as well, the economies which took early steps as well, and hence not so many people were actually affected, and not the death rates were staying quite low as well, that they also had an economic advantage as well. So again, if you do the right thing, then it actually has also a positive result as well. So if people are not being able to go out, they may still be ordering some food in, for example. So you still have some economic value. But if people are ill, and if unfortunately, it's very sad to see how many people have really died because of that. Well, there's nothing more depressing for a person, but also for a country, and with it economically as well. It's depressing economically when people are
Sure.
dying. So
Absolutely.
it was, yes, it's not comfortable to again going through the change of like, oh, but I'm used to be going out and I'm used to be doing this and the other, but yes, but now I can go out again. I can actually meet friends. We keep social distancing. I only do outdoor meetings. I don't do anything indoors as well. But I have the option now, and this is wonderful.
Right. Yeah, it will take some time, but yeah, at least we are moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. So, and there may be waves as well, but I think as long as we do the right thing, we can take the worst away. We're not going to be able to avoid it in its entirety, but we at least can take some of the horror scenarios away, and because of that, also the economy will adapt and b also recover as well quicker than if we go through a really negative humanitarian
Right.
situation.
Right. Awesome. Sonia, it was such a wonderful conversation. Didn't realize that we've passed the hour.
Oh,
And yeah, but I think before we go, I'll just take one last question because that was the expectation from our audience as well. If you need to summarize, what are, in your opinion, the important qualities or traits of a leader?
the most important part, I think, is to have clarity. Clarity within yourself, in your internal communication, about your feelings, about your values, about your visions as well. And having that being really congruent with what it is you're saying and what it is you're doing. If you don't
Right.
have that, none actually is really ready, because a part of it is the external. If you want to be a leader, you also need to have the external communication, and that is the words you're saying, it's the action you are doing, and that is what inspires and draws other people in.
Awesome. Awesome. Wonderful. It was a great conversation, Sonia. We really loved it. And thank you for the audience to have joined us. If you want to listen to the program again or watch it again to kind of take out the nuggets that Sonia has given you, or if you've joined late and you've not been able to see the full program, you're welcome to watch it at our YouTube channel. The links will be there on our social media. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Sonia. It was indeed a real pleasure having you here. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, Nalin, for having me. And it was a wonderful conversation and very inspiring for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.